Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. You know that feeling, right? When you're facing something tough and maybe part of you just wants to back away, worried you won't measure up, or perhaps you see other people who just seem to, I don't know, sail through setbacks and you wonder, how do they do that? We've all heard about psychologist Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset. The idea that our smarts and abilities aren't like set in stone. But knowing it here points to head and actually living it. Well, they can feel worlds apart, can't they? So today, we're going to dive into that gap. We want to get into the practical ways, maybe the less obvious ones, to really shift from just understanding the idea to making it part of how you operate. So just to recap quickly, the growth mindset at its heart is this belief that, yeah, your intelligence, your skills, they can develop through effort, through learning, through sticking with it. It's really the opposite of that fixed mindset voice that might say, oh, I'm just no good at math, or I'll never get the hang of this. The growth mindset adds that crucial word, yet. I'm not good at this yet, but I can learn. I can get better.
And that yet, it's small, but gosh, it's powerful, isn't it? But I think what's really fascinating, beyond just the definition, is how this difference plays out subtly in our actual choices day to day. Like with a fixed mindset, you might avoid trying something new, not because you physically can't do it, but because you're afraid of looking incompetent, right? That fear is paralyzing.
Yeah.
Whereas the growth mindset it automatically frames it differently. It's, okay, how can I learn this
Yeah.
almost before the fear even kicks in? And that changes everything about how you see your own potential, how you interact with, well, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's solid research behind this too. People who really operate from a growth mindset, they're not just, duffer when things go wrong. They actually tend to achieve more. They handle stress better. You think of someone like Thomas Edison, right? The famous
I
line.
mean, light bulb story.
Exactly. I found 10,000 ways that didn't work. He didn't see himself as a failure after attempt 9,999.
No.
Each attempt was just information. Data pointing him closer. That's
Yeah.
pure growth mindset.
It really is. And that's a
Mhm.
critical distinction because let's be honest, for many people, a setback, a failure, that's kind of the end of the line. They take it personally. But Edison or anyone really living this mindset, they see that moment as, like you said, Jada, not a verdict, not a dead end. And that fundamentally shifts how you approach any challenge. Instead of being stopped by that fear that what if I'm not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
you're actually driven by curiosity. Like, okay, what can I learn here?
It turns obstacles from these scary walls into,
Re-
into opportunities to get smarter strategically.
So that brings us to our mission for you today in this deep dive. We really want to unpack this, break it down into three practical, actionable things, steps you can start using like right away to cultivate this mindset for real. We're moving past just knowing the term into actually doing it. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, step one is about embracing challenges, seeing them as opportunities. Now, the fixed mindset, it naturally shies away from hard stuff, doesn't it? Because if you fail, it feels like it says something bad about you, fundamentally, right? It feels like a judgment on your inherent ability.
Exactly. But with a growth mindset, those same challenges, they look different. They look like chances to grow, to develop. I mean, I remember when I first had the idea for this deep dive series, honestly, my first thoughts were pure fixed mindset.
Oh, really?
Oh, I'm not charismatic enough for this, or my setup isn't professional. And the big one, what if nobody even listens? It felt huge and, yeah, deeply personal. The turning point was consciously deciding to reframe it, to tell myself, okay, this feels hard, yes, but doing it will make me better. It's kind of like that analogy of the brain being a muscle. The more you work it, especially on tough things, the stronger it actually gets. New connections are formed. So here's a practical tip for you listening. Next time you hit something challenging, maybe a new project at work, or trying to learn a tricky skill, consciously reframe it. Literally say to yourself, okay, this is tough, but it's making me stronger, or this is making me better. Try it for just a week. Maybe jot down one challenge each day and one thing you learned tackling it. I bet you'll start noticing a shift in how you feel about those hard moments.
And, that's not just positive thinking fluff. It's grounded in neuroscience. When you consciously reframe like that, you are strengthening those neural pathways tied to learning and resilience. It's like upgrading a rough path in your brain into a paved road.
Mhm.
It makes navigating the next challenge genuinely easier. This whole idea, reframing challenges, it's actually a core principle in things like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Changing thought patterns to change feelings and actions. It really makes you pause and think, doesn't it? How many growth opportunities might we miss just because we let that initial, ugh, this is too hard feeling win out? What potential are we leaving untapped?
That's a really powerful question, and it leads perfectly into step two, which is all about reframing failure. Seeing it as feedback. This is absolutely essential. Failure isn't the endpoint, it's just information. Valuable feedback. Carol Dweck's research really hammers this home. People with a growth mindset, they don't necessarily like making mistakes, but they don't fear them in the same way. They see them as chances to learn.
Yeah, they don't crumble.
Exactly. And I can definitely relate to the before picture here. I used to absolutely hate messing up. Seriously. I'd play it safe sometimes just to avoid falling flat on my face, to save face. What really started to change things for me was actively shifting the question I asked myself afterwards. Instead of, why did I screw that up? I started asking, okay, what did this teach me? Sounds maybe a bit simple, but honestly, it was a game changer internally. So for example, let's say you give a presentation and it doesn't land well,
Yeah, happens to us all.
right? The fixed mindset goes straight to, I'm just terrible at presentations, full stop. But the growth mindset prompts different questions. Specific, constructive ones like, okay, did I actually prepare enough? Or maybe my delivery could be smoother. How could I practice that?
Getting specific.
Yes, and try this. Write down just one lesson learned from every setback, big or small. Over time, you really do start to see those failures differently. They become stepping stones. There's even this idea of keeping a failure journal for a month. Sounds maybe a bit counterintuitive or even grim,
Yeah, a bit.
but honestly, tracking what went wrong and what you learned is incredibly powerful for shifting that perspective long term.
Absolutely. I like the analogy of building something. If you're putting together, say, furniture and a piece doesn't fit,
Right.
you don't immediately throw the whole thing out and declare yourself a failure as a builder, do you?
No, you'd look at the instructions again or the piece.
Exactly. You examine why it didn't fit and you adjust. You figure it out. Failure in a growth mindset is just that ill-fitting piece. It's a signal. Adjust here.
Yeah.
Treating failure as data, not as a reflection of your worth, that's fundamental to innovation, to improvement, to pretty much any kind of progress. And it changes the emotional response too, doesn't it? It shifts from that sinking feeling of regret or shame towards, well, curiosity. Analysis. Okay, what happened there?
That's such a good point about the emotion, because that immediate sting of I messed up can be really strong for most people. So what do you think is the trickiest part of actually doing that? Internalizing it, separating yourself from the outcome?
That is a great question. Because logically we might get it. Okay, learn from mistakes. But yeah, the emotions often react faster, don't they? I think the key is consciously creating a bit of distance. It's actively practicing the thought. This result happened and it showed me X, rather than I am a failure because this happened.
Mm-hmm.
It takes deliberate practice, like you're training a new mental habit, building that muscle to pause and analyze instead of immediately judging yourself.
Creating that space. I like that. And that flows right into our third step, actively seeking out learning and feedback. Because a growth mindset isn't passive. It thrives on continuous learning, on actively going out and getting input. Lifelong learning becomes, well, essential.
It's fuel for the fire.
Yeah. And this means using all kinds of resources, right? Reading, taking online courses, watching tutorials, but also, and this is crucial, asking for constructive criticism.
Right.
Research shows pretty clearly that people who actively seek out feedback, they just tend to get better faster.
Makes sense. You're getting more data points.
Exactly. So here's a concrete action for you. Every week, try to learn one new thing that's related to a goal you have. Could be listening to a relevant deep dive like this one, finding a YouTube tutorial, or even just asking a colleague you respect for some quick advice on something. And please, don't shy away from asking for feedback, even if it feels a bit vulnerable or uncomfortable. I mentioned my early deep dive attempts. I remember asking a friend, whose opinion I really valued, to look at an early script.
Oh, brave.
And the feedback was direct. They didn't hold back. It stung a little initially, I won't lie, but ultimately, that tough feedback was invaluable. It made the whole thing so much stronger. I went from that first rough attempt, awkward pauses, weird lighting, the works, to where we are now. It really was about learning as I went, driven by that input.
That's a perfect illustration and brings up that point about vulnerability, doesn't it? Actively seeking feedback isn't just about getting information passively. It requires opening yourselves up, saying, hey, tell me what you really think, even if it's critical. And that act itself, being willing to be vulnerable for the sake of growth, it turbocharges the learning process way beyond just, say, reading a book alone. It creates this amazing positive feedback loop, right? You seek feedback, you learn, you feel more capable, which makes you more willing to seek more feedback. It builds on itself.
That makes total sense. But I wonder, is there a risk of getting too much feedback, like becoming overwhelmed or pulled in too many directions? How do you filter it?
That's a really important point. It's definitely a balance. The goal isn't just to blindly accept and act on every single piece of criticism you get.
Hmm.
That would be chaotic. It's more about the proactive seeking of input, gathering those different perspectives, those data points, and then you have to process it. You use your own judgment, your understanding of your goals to decide what's actually useful and actionable for you. Sometimes feedback will conflict, and that's okay. That's where your critical thinking comes in. It's another skill, another muscle you build with practice discerning helpful feedback.
Right. It's not about outsourcing your decisions. It's about informing them better.
Precisely.
So, thinking about all this, what it really boils down to, for you listening, is that the power of a growth mindset isn't about suddenly becoming perfect overnight. It's not about erasing challenges or failures. It's about starting right where you are, right now, and committing to that ongoing journey, that process of learning, adjusting, growing. My own experience with starting this deep dive really taught me that. Those initial fears were real, but pushing through, learning from the feedback, sticking with it, that's what made the difference. And honestly, I'm just so glad I didn't let those initial fixed mindset thoughts win. So let's quickly recap those 3 actionable steps we talked about for really building that growth mindset. 1, embrace challenges. See them as opportunities to get stronger. 2, reframe failure. Treat it as valuable feedback, not a verdict. And 3, actively seek out learning and constructive feedback. Be proactive. And remember, you don't need to tackle all 3 at once. Just pick one. Maybe this week, focus on facing one specific challenge differently. Or make a point of asking, what did I learn? Next time something doesn't go to plan. Start small.
And maybe leave you with this thought to ponder. If our minds really are like muscles, truly capable of growing stronger with effort, just imagine the potential we might be leaving untouched. What capabilities are lying dormant simply because we haven't challenged our own assumptions about what we're capable of? So consider this. What new challenges might you take on? What skills might you try to learn if you genuinely believe deep down that your capacity to grow was essentially limitless?
Yeah,
What becomes possible then?
that's a powerful thought to end on. Remember, you absolutely have the capacity to grow and learn. Believe in that potential. Keep challenging yourself, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.